Hello, I'm Lisa Green, one of the writers at BMC, and I'd like to explain how you can add options to your service offerings. If you want to allow your end users to modify services they are requesting or have already provisioned, you can add options with option choices. For example, you might include a memory option with 3 option choices: 4 GB, 8 GB, and 16 GB. This allows you to create one service blueprint with various memory options instead of creating 3 similar blueprints. Creating option choices reduces the proliferation of service offerings and service blueprints that you need to configure in typical cloud environments. Before you begin, you'll need to determine a few things: whether you want the option to be available during the initial request, day 1 provisioning, after a service is provisioned, also called day 2, or for any request, on day 1 or day 2, which blueprints will correspond to the options, whether you want to use the tag or the object identifier or resource set identifier when configuring the option choices, and if you want a special icon to appear next to the option, you'll want to have that ready as well. Let's create the memory option I mentioned earlier. To prepare, I've added tags to the server groups. I'll use these tags when I configure the choices. For simplicity, the tag for the application tier server group is called Application. The tag for the database tier server group is called Database. These tags are under the tier tag group. Now let's get started with creating the option. First, open the Options editor. You can open it from the Service Catalog workspace or from a service offering under the Options tab, which is where I'll open it. Click New Option. Enter a name and description for the option. For option type, select whether the option is for the request definition, the initial request on day 1, for a post-deploy action, after the service has been provisioned, day 2, or for any request. I'll select Request Definition. If I wanted to add an icon for the option, I'd click Upload Icon. Note that a custom icon appears in My Cloud Services console only if the option is associated to multiple tiers or grouped options. Click OK. To allow users to choose more than one choice for an option, you can choose Multi-Select. I will leave this option unselected so end users can select only one choice. Now I'll create the option choices. Click New Option Choice. For the first option choice, I'll enter 4 GB. If a cost is tied to the option, enter the customer price or deployment cost. For this exercise, I'll leave these fields empty. Click OK to close the dialog box. Now I'll repeat the steps to create the 8 GB and 16 GB option choices. To make one of the choices the default, you can select the Pre-Select checkbox. Now that I've created the option choices, I need to configure the choices so that when selected, the choices modify or extend the service blueprint. Select the first option choice. Click Option Choice Blueprint Configuration Editor. Click New Blueprint Configuration. Select a blueprint configuration. I have 2 choices: Service Definition and Service Deployment Definition. Service definition options apply to all deployments for the service, for example, small, medium, and large. Service deployment definition options apply only to one deployment, for example, small, but not medium and large. For this example, I'm adding a memory option, so I'll select Blueprint Configuration, Service Deployment Definition, Compute Resources, and Memory Size. In the Resource Set Identifier area, I could select By Name and enter the name for the server group. If I open the blueprint, I can select the component to find the name. The By Name field is case sensitive, so you must make sure that the name of the resource set, in this case the server group, in the blueprint exactly matches the name you enter in the By Name field. Otherwise, the option choice will not appear in the My Cloud Services console. To allow me more flexibility, I'll select By Tag and add the tag group and tag name for the application tier. Next, enter the values that will extend the service blueprint. For this example, I'll enter 4096 megabytes, which equals 4 gigabytes. Click OK. Now, I'll create the remaining option choices, 8 and 16 gigabytes. Next, I need to associate the options with the service offering. On the Options tab for the request definition, I'll move the Add Memory option to the Selected Options table. I'll change the default category folder to Memory and click Save. The service offering I updated here is for an initial Day 1 request. If you want to allow this option to be available after the service is provisioned, that is, on Day 2, you must create a post-deploy action in the service catalog and associate the option with that action. Let's see how the offering and the new option looks to users. Because I selected only the application tag for each option choice, the option appears under the Application Tier panel as a slider. Now, let's change the option choices to add memory to both the Application Tier and the Database Tier. Open the Options Editor and select the Add Memory option. Select the 4 GB choice and add a blueprint configuration for the database tier using the database tag. I'll do the same for the 8 GB and 16 GB choices. Let's see how the offering has changed in the My Cloud Services console. Because the option choices correspond to both tiers, they appear above the application tier and database tier panels. The option choices are no longer on a slider, but are radio buttons. When I select one of the buttons, the memory changes in both panels. I can click Reset to clear the options. I hope this video has given you a better understanding of how options work in BMC Cloud Lifecycle Management. Thank you for watching.